We're up to Memtes Samid Beis, towards the end of the Amid of Nachman. So the one thing you have to remember is the Gemara had a rule yesterday. If you have a puncture that's covered up by fat, does the fat seal up the puncture and avoid the animal from being a treifa? So the Gemara said the rule is as follows. If the fat is forbidden, it does not. If the fat is permitted, it does. So that's the rule. Chaylev, which is aser, does not seal it. It's not very tight. It's like more of a coat. But regular fat does. Says the Gemara, there is an exception to that rule. Even within permissible fat, some fat does not seal up a puncture. Amr of Nachman. If you have fat in the body and it's shaped like a helmet, it's like round and it's shaped like a helmet, it's not very tight, then it does not seal up a puncture. Which type of fat is he referring to? Heicha, where in the body is this type of fat? I saw this when I watched a video once of Ramachpud from Eretz Yisrael. You know, he's a person. He's not just a hechsher. So I watched him. He's a Yemenite Rav in Bnei Brak, and I saw him dissect a goat, and he showed this type of fat, and mamish was like shaped like a horn, like a bowl. What type of fat is this? So Amri lachiti de karkasha. Some say it's by the rectum area. There's two round mounds of fat that does not puncture a hole because they're not very tight, they're more roundish. The Amrila tarfasha deliba, and some say it's on the pericardium, it's on the heart. There's a fat that covers the heart, and apparently that's not very tight, so it will not seal up a puncture in the heart. Okay, that was sugya number 1 of like 17. So
Hold on, so therefore if the fat seals the hole, then it's okay.
yeah. In a very elementary level. Yes, but I'm saying, but there's more to it. Anyway, so the Gemara says like this. We said the rule was, if it's permissible fat, it seals up. If it's non-permissible fat, it does not. Says the Gemara. Now, also, if you remember yesterday, we had that there's the keva, the stomach. One of the stomachs is called the keva. And we said, if this fat that's on top of the keva, is it permissible or not? So we said it's a machlekes, Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel. So the Gemara now is going to say, obviously, so that machlekes will obviously have direct relevance. If you hold that fat seal is mutter, then it potentially seals. If you hold that fat is aser, then it potentially doesn't. So says the Gemara, regarding the keva, there's two fats actually. If you look in the picture, the keva is sort of shaped like a bow. On the back of the ois v'had, they actually have it. There's the fat on top and the fat below it. So says the Gemara, Amarava, Sham Mina de Rav Nachman Tarti. I once heard from Rav Nachman that he said the following thing. Regarding the keva, there's two fats. There's what he called the chimtza and bar chimtza. These were nicknames that he gave for the fats. Different types of fats, fat A and fat B. Chad sasim and chad loy sasim. One seals up holes and one does not. V'lo yadana haminayu. But I don't know which one is which. Now, meaning which, I don't know what they are. And then within the I don't know what they are, chimtza and bar chimtza, which are nicknames for fats, I don't know what they're nicknames for, but I also don't know which one seals and which one doesn't. Does the chimtza seal and not the bar chimtza, or vice versa? So he says, Rav Huna bar China, Rav Huna bar Rav Nachman Omar, bar chimtza sasim, chimtza loy sasim. The fat that's called bar chimtza, which we'll identify in a moment, that seals. The chimtza does not seal. Now, how do I remember this? That the bar chimtza seals and the chimtza doesn't? Because bar means the sun. It means the son of the chimtza. The bar chimtza seals, so it's stronger. And the way to remember it is Yafa koyach haben koyach av. When it comes to Yerusha, there's a concept in Nidarim that Yafa koyach haben, that sometimes the son is stronger in monetary claims than the father. So the way to remember it is the son is stronger than the father. So bar chimtza seals, chimtza doesn't. Okay, now what is this chimtza and what is this bar chimtza? Says the Gemara, Hai chimtza v'hai bar chimtza, Tashima, Damar of Nachman. Okay, so apparently within the two fats of this keva, forget about the large fat in general, but there's two sub-categories of fats within the keva, and apparently one of them was a machlekes between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. Could you eat it? One of them was a machlekes between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. Rav Nachman said, Inu, now, so says Rabbi Nachman, Inu och michal achli. In Eretz Yisrael, they eat this fat. Whatever fat this is, we'll identify in a second. One of these fats in Eretz Yisrael they eat, which means it's mamish mutter. So says Rabbi Nachman, although we don't eat it in Bavel, it should at least seal. Because again, permissible fat seals. So says Rabbi Nachman, we're not going to eat the fat because we're choishish deraisa, okay, safek deraisa. But to say that it doesn't seal, that we're not going to do. So says Rabbi Nachman, there's a certain fat which is a machlekes between Bnei Bavel and Bnei Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael eats it, Bnei Bavel doesn't, but Bnei Bavel agrees that it could seal. So one of these fats is a machlekes, but both agree that it can seal. The other fat it does not. Says the Gemara. So they hold you could eat it. So while we don't hold you could eat it, we should at least hold that you could seal. In other words, Rabbi Nachman is saying is that one of the fats by the keva Bnei Bavel and Bnei Eretz Yisrael argue about whether it's edible, halachically, but they both agree it can seal. Which fat is this? So by the keva, there's two fats. There's the fat on the top of it and the fat below it. The top of it is the aitera, and the bottom of it is the akashta. So it says the Gemara, the akashta kuli amal pligi de aser. Everyone agrees the akashta is aser, which means everyone agrees the akashta does not seal. Ki pligi de aisera, the machlokes between Bnei Bavel and Bnei Eretz Yisrael, where they argue whether it's edible, but they both permit it to seal, that's talking to the aisera, which is the fat on top. Okay. Ikad Amri, some have a slightly different version. They say no, the aisera kli amal pligi de shari. Everyone agrees the aisera is mutter. Ki pligi da akashta. The machlokes is by akashta. So basically, okay, so you have this machlokes by sealing, but a subcategory of this machlokes is there's two fats by the keva. One of them is a machlokes between Bnei Bavel and Bnei Eretz Yisrael. Bnei Eretz Yisrael eats it, Bnei Bavel does not. So says the Gemara, ki had amr of Avia, amr of Ami mekamtzen. Rav Ami, who is from Eretz Yisrael, said mekamtzen. You know what mekamtzen means? Mekamtzen means you take this fat, you scrape off a little bit of the top, because we're afraid a little bit of the top might be from other parts of the body, you know, when fats touch. So the little bit of the top we're afraid is the other parts. But the actual fat itself of the akashta, he would eat. So Rav Ami would eat, because I mentioned before, this part of the fat of the cave is a machlokes, Bnei Bavel, Bnei Eretz Yisrael. Bnei Yisrael ate it, so Rav Ami, who was from Eretz Yisrael, would eat it. The Gemara says similarly, Rav Abi, I have a kamin, came to Rav Ami, Rav Ami, I was once by Rav Ami. He scraped off a little bit of the fat, but the rest of the fat from this part of the body, he ate. Says the Gemara, Shamei de Rav Chanina have a koi kamei de Rav Chanina. Rav Chanina's gabai was once standing by Rav Chanina. Amarle kmoitz havli lechel. Rav Chanina said to the gabai, pass me the fat. I'm going to eat that fat. Because again, that fat, he was from Eretz Yisrael. He felt it's permitted. Chazi dehava kamachasim. Rav Chanina saw that his gabai was a little bit hesitant. His gabai obviously felt that it's a problem. So he says, Amarle, kivaloat. Oh, you must be from Bavel. Okay, gumshdi, then throw it out. Meaning Rav Chanina did not want. Rav Chanina was sharing a meal with his gabai. Rav Chanina held that it's mutter. He noticed the gabai was a little bit hesitant. He said, oh, you must be from Bavel. You don't eat this? Okay, we won't eat this. This, by the way, is one of the sources, maybe I'll talk about this tonight, that if you have something that you hold is permissible, but they hold not, to give them to eat could be lifnei iver lo'isitin mechshol, even though it's technically, what you hold is mutter, but from their perspective, it's a problem. It could be lifnei iver, like, opening bottles on Shabbos, this type of shayla comes up. Okay, Tanya, that was sukkah number 3. Let's keep going. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, B'nei Mayin Shenikvu. If one of the intestines gets punctured, V'leicha Saisma, but the mucus seals it, Kshera. That's kosher. The mucus is a natural sealant, and that could seal up the puncture of the intestines to make it kosher. Ma'alecha, what type of mucus? Amrachana shirka demaya denafik agaducha. It's a sticky fluid that comes out when you squeeze it, i.e. mucus. So the point is, if there's a puncture in the intestines, the mucus can be a natural sealant. This is Rav Shimon talking. Gamiri Chavre de Rav Abia mid Rav Abba. The friends of Rav Abba learned the tradition from Rav Abba, Man Rav Zera. And who are the friends of Rav Abba? That was Rav Zera. Amri Lechavre de Rav Zera, Rav Zera, Man Rav Abba. Amr Rav Abba ber Rav Chia bar Abba. Hachi Amr Rav Chia bar Abba. Amr Rav Yochanan. Whoa, halacha. A lot of names. Here's the rules. Here's what they were makabel from Rav Abba. Halacha Rav Shimon betrefis. The halacha follows Rav Shimon in treifis, which we just said that if there's a hole in the intestines and it fills with mucus, Rav Shimon said it's kosher. We follow Rav Shimon. The halacha Rav Shimon be'evel. The halacha follows Rav Shimon Gamliel by treifis, and the halacha follows Rav Shimon by avelus. Now by treifis, I know what the halacha is. We just referenced it, that if there's a puncture in the intestines and the mucus seals it, it's kosher. That we paskin like. But we also paskin like Rav Shimon by avelus. What's the halacha by avelus? Halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel by treifah da'amrin. Halacha Rav Shimon be'evel mahi. What's the reference to the laws of avelus? I'll say that. So we'll say it inside. Basically, avelus is as follows. If you have a family that someone finds out, it's negayan nowadays a little bit with travel, much more complicated with travel nowadays. You have to speak to like a big paisik, God forbid if it ever comes up, where you have family members that are not sitting shiv at the same time. Now, in America, it would happen where you have half the families flying to Eretz Yisrael and half of them are staying behind. But let's go back then. In the times of the Gemara, the case is as follows. You have Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven's father dies. Shimon's father also dies. Reuven finds out about it 2 days into Shiva and then joins the family. Does he just continue their count, or does he have to restart and sit a whole 7 days? So here's Rav Shimon's rules. If you come within the first 3 days, now if you come after that, then you have to restart it. But let's say you come within the first 3 days because you just found out about it. So here's the halacha: if you came within 1 day's journey, so you were a couple hours away, you joined the family, you just continue with them. If they're up to day 2, you're up to day 2. But if you were traveling and you came from a distance that was further than a day apart, you have to restart 7 days. If you join them after 3 days, it doesn't matter where you come from. You have to restart. Comes Shimon says, if you come within 1 day's journey, even if you come day 7, you don't have to restart. You count with them. So Shimon's rule is, when it comes to Avelos, that if you come within 1 day's journey and you join the family, you join them. Whatever day they're up to, it doesn't matter. It could be day 6. Then you only sit Shiva for 2 days. Says the Gemara, so there were 2 statements that he had heard, one by Trefus and one by Avelos. Amar Mandahu, someone who, we're not sure who it was, said, I wish I can go, because this is from Rav Abba, the name of Rav Chia. Rav Abba bar Rav Chia bar Abba, who's in Eretz Yisrael. When he heard these teachings, he said, halavai, I should be able to go to Eretz Yisrael and learn directly from them and not just hear quotations. So Kisalik, when this person went to Eretz Yisrael, Rav Abba bar Rav Chia bar Abba, so he met this Rav Abba, and he wanted to ask him about these halachas, about the intestines with the mucus and the avelos. Did you say that we pass in Rishim Gamliel by Treifa, which is that if there's a hole in the intestines and it gets filled with mucus, it's kosher? Was that true? Yeah, in halacha, yeah, that's what I said. Rav Shimon be'Evel, Mai, did you also say that we pass like Rav Shimon by Avelos when it comes to 1 day's journey and counting with them? So Amar Lei plugged in. He says, no, that's a machlokes, whether we pass like Rav Shimon. The Itmar of Chiz Damar halacha. If Chiz says we pass like Rav Shimon, B'chein Rav Yechon halacha. That's also Rav Yechon's opinion. Rav Nachman Amar Ein halacha, but Rav Nachman says we don't pass like Rav Shimon. Ve'ein halacha Rav Shimon will be al treifa. V'halacha Rav Shimon be'Evel. But the end of the conclusion, the Gemara says, after all this, we do not pass in like Rav Shimon Gamliel by Treifa, meaning we pass in that mucus does not seal the intestines, but we do pass in like Avelos. The Gemara says, why? Because halacha kedivrei hamekel ba'ovel. Because anytime there's a shayla in Avelos, we always go with the most lenient view. So Rav Shimon is very lenient because he says that if you join them later on, day 5, you only have to potentially sit shiva for 2 days. So because he's lenient, we're going to follow Rav Shimon, because halacha kedivrei hamekel ba'ovel. All right, that was sugya of like 5. Let's keep going. Amr of Shimi Barchia, Makifin bivnei mayim, which means that if there's a puncture in the intestines, and I don't know when the puncture happened, did it happen before the animal died? Or did it happen right now? It's a fresh puncture. Here's what you do: you take the intestines, make another puncture, and look at them. If they look the same, that means they just happened. If the other one looks a little older, a little bit different, that means that it happened previously. Meaning you're able to make a puncture, and in other words, that the fact that it happened earlier is not going to change it. You'll be able to tell, I guess. You'll be able to tell. So you make a puncture now and see. Does it look the same? That means that it's a fresh puncture. If they look a little different, that means that it's an old puncture. Huh? I know. Yeah. I know. The Gemara says, "Hanu b'nei mayim d'asla kamid Rava." There was a certain intestines that was punctured, that was brought to Rava. So Rava did this. Akfinu, he made a puncture, but it didn't look the same. So says the Gemara, so he was going to treif it up because he said they don't look the same. It must be that that's an older puncture. This is a newer puncture. Amr of Misharshia Berei. So Misharshia, his son came and memashmesh bu. All of a sudden he took the new puncture that he just made and he rubbed it a little bit for like 30 seconds. He rubbed it. You want to know why? Because the other puncture, right? He punctured both. There's the original puncture and then there's the new puncture. They didn't look the same. So he said, they must not be the same. One must be new and one must be old. So that's a treifa. He says, no, rub the other one a little bit for 30 seconds. Then they look the same. Why? The other puncture might also be new. But think about how many hands are rubbing it before they brought it to Rava. Yeah, the shaykhed who's looked at it. The other guy looked at it. By the time I got to Rava, it was already rubbed for a couple of times. So he says, rub the other ones. Meaning, treat it exactly the same. And then they look identical. So it could be there now. So he says, Amrlech Minallah Hasa, Rava said to his son, how'd you know to do this, to rub it? Amrlech Kama Yadim Mishash Baharim Kama Delays the Kama Demar. He says, think about how many people have touched this intestines before it got to you. So Mustama, they rubbed it a little bit. So I rubbed it also the same amount, not a crazy amount. And all of a sudden it looks the same. So Amrlech Chacham Bri B'Treifis Rav Yechon. He says, my son is a bucky and treifis mamish like Rav Yechon. Rav Yechon Rav Elazar Mitavayu Makif and Bereya. Okay, quick thing about the lungs. There's the 2 lower lobes that are very big, and then there's the upper lobes, which are smaller, 3 on the left, 2 on the right. So 5 on top, 2 on the bottom, big, small. So says the Gemara, same thing. If there's a puncture in the lungs, you could make a puncture and see if it looks the same. Makif and Bereya. But Rava, lo yamrun el ba'isa aruga, avim aruga l'aruga loy. Rava says you're only able to compare punctures if they're both on the same side. Meaning, let's say top left get a puncture, then you have to make the comparable puncture in the top left. You can't go top right. You can't go left to right because left to right are different. And if you puncture the left to the right, you can't try to compare the two. So if there's a potential puncture in top left, you got to make another puncture top left. You can't make top right. Says the Gemara, but that's not how we paskin. How do we paskin? We paskin, you can go top, right, or left. What you can't do is top to bottom because the bottom lobes are much bigger. So you can go top left to top right. So if you have a puncture top left, you can make a puncture top right and compare the two. But what you can't do, and by the way, you can go bottom left, bottom right. But what you can't go is, so you can go right and left, you just can't go up to bottom. If there's a puncture bottom left, you can't make a puncture top left or top right. You can't go top to bottom. You can go side by side. You can go adjacent, you can't go top to bottom. Says the Gemara, Hilchasa, Afilu maruga laruga medaka ladaka megasa lagasa. Daka to daka is not small animal with big animal. Daka, because that would be, you can't compare animals. Daka to daka means, daka is the top, gasa is the bottom. So you can go top to top. You can't go top to bottom. And you can go bottom to bottom. You can go bottom to top. Okay. Sugya number 9. Amar Abaya. Abaya v'Rabbi dam tavayu makif and bekana. Let's say there's a slit in the trachea. And I want to know when the slit happened. Did the slit happen before the animal died or afterwards? So the trachea has rings with cartilage, with skin in between. So the rule is like this. You're able to compare the two. So if there's, let's say, a puncture, you can make another puncture there and look if it's the same. But says the Gemara, Amrav papali amr l'ba'isa chulya, but it only works within a chulya. Chulya are a band of 3 rings. You can only do it within 3 rings because apparently as the esophagus, as the trachea moves throughout the body, its texture changes. So therefore, it gets smoother towards the bottom. So in other words, you have to pick 3, and you can compare within the 3 rings. Says the Gemara also, you're only able to compare the same area of the trachea. There's the front part of the trachea and the back part of the trachea. They're not the same. So if you have a hole in the back part of the trachea, you have to make another hole in the back part of the trachea. If you have a hole in the front part of the trachea, you have to make a hole in the front part of the trachea. You can't go front to back or back to front. Says the Gemara, bar chulya is the back, chulya is the front. You can't go front to back or back to front. You can only go front to front or back to back. Just gonna give a little victory sip. All right, now we're at everyone's favorite topic. We're doing the rectum. Says the Gemara. Now, apparently, that part of the body, I don't know, some sort of, that part of the body, the rectum has some sort of skin tissue? I don't know, it's an organ? We'll go an organ. So says the Gemara, Amr Ziri Chalchulis. If the rectum was nikva, was punctured, kshera, it's kosher. Why? Because we always said that if there's a puncture, it's a problem unless it's naturally sealed. Apparently the hip bones are very, very tight around that part of the body. So the hip bones basically like force it in, so that even if there's a puncture, it stays basically naturally sealed. According to this, you don't even need a rectum. You could actually remove almost all of it because the hip bones basically hold it in. Yep. Yep.
If you have a hole in the rectum, someone does, they're like a tree.
Well, yeah.
What? They're going to die?
I would assume the waste would probably... I think the concern would be that if the hole is large enough or that the waste can get into the body, it would cause septic. That's what I would assume. So the point is, if there's a hole in that area, the hip bones keep it in. So the Gemara points it out, how much of it can be punctured and it's still okay. So Amrav Ilah, Amrav Yechon, Malkam Hadavik, if it's a part of that part of the body, part of the rectum, which is very tight, meaning the hip bones are very tight over there, then Berubai, it could be punctured right of it, because the hip bones keep it in. Shaloi b'makam hadavik, but if it's a part of it that's not as tight, then b'mashu, then a puncture is a problem. In other words, it's just a matter of, you understand, if it's a part that's tight, then a puncture is, then it can be slit kamat roiv. If it's not tight, then a puncture is going to be an issue. That was quoting Rav Yochanan. When they said this teaching in front of Nachman, that what? That if it's a part that's loose, it's a puncture, but a part that's tight, it's roiv. So Amar Lei, Lava Minul, who didn't I tell you, Loi Tislube, go to the next page, Buki Sariki, I told you not to hang empty bottles on Rav Yochanan. In other words, I told you not to misquote Rav Yochanan. That's not what he said. Hachi Amar Rav Yochanan, Makam Adavik, Rav Yochanan said that if it's a part of the rectum that's actually tight around the hip bones, Afilu nitel kuloi, it could be entirely removed, it's kosher. As long as a little bit is remaining, who cares about roiv? It could be entirely removed, as long as there's a little bit remaining, as we'll see. You just have to have enough to grasp to remain intact. Arsko has a picture, like a circle of it. Says the Gemara, "V'kama, how much has to remain?" Rabbi kim maloi badata betura, the width of a finger, which is by an ox. Ox are very big. A width of a finger. As long as a width of a finger, the rest can be removed, and it's you'll survive. All right. Sugi number 12. So says the Gemara. Okay, this is one of the stomachs is called the keres. The Mishnah said the following statement: Keres hapnimi, whatever part of the body is called the keres hapnimi, the inner keres, a puncture is treif. Keres hachitzain, the outer part of the keres, only if it's roiv. Okay, so inner part of the keres is a puncture, outer the part of the keres is roiv. So the question is, what part? It's one of the stomachs. So the inner keres is a puncture, the outer keres is roiv. The question is obvious. Which part of the stomach is the inner keres, and which part of the stomach is the outer keres? Again, the inner keres is a puncture, the outer keres is roiv. So which part of the stomach is the inner keres, which part is the outer keres? Ha-keres hapnimi, am Rabbi Yehuda b'Rav. So you have different explanations of what is the inner keres, which a puncture would treif it up. So Hayir Nasan Bar Shila Reish Tavachia did Tzipuri lifnei Rav Shimon lifnei Reb Mishum Rav Nasan. Nasan Bar Shila, who was the chief sheichit in Tzipuri, testified before Rebbe in the name of Rabbi Nasan. Ezu keres hapnimi. What part of the keres is called the keres hapnimi? It's called the Sanya Divi. Sanya Divi is the sisum. It's where the waist is kept. It's a little bit of a pouch within the keres where the waist is kept. If that's punctured, it's treif because the waist will get into the bloodstream and it'll cause septic. Sanya, by the way, is from a lashon. Sanya, it's hated. The butchers hate this part, Rashi says, because if they puncture it, it ruins the whole meat. So Sanya Divi, the part of the body that's Sanya that's hated. It's a little pouch. That's the first shot of what's the inner keres. V'chein am Rav Yishmael karcha sani divi. Rav Yishmael Omer istobcha de karsa. Rav Yishmael says it's called the istobcha de karsa. It's the stomach of the keres. Now, what is that? So, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, "What's the istobcha de karsi?" Eini yodeh. I don't know. That's what Rashi says. So, okay, Rav Asi. We're trying to figure out what's the inner keres. So we have the sani divi. We have the pouch of the stomach of the pouch. Then we have a third opinion. Rav Asi quotes Rav Yochanan as saying, "Mokam tsar yesh bekeres." There's a narrow section of the keres, ve'eni yodei ezu, but I don't know where it is. Let me ask you a question. It's one thing for Rashi to say, "I don't understand what the Gemara is saying." Rav Asi got up in shir and said in the name of Rav Yochanan, "There's a part of the stomach, but I don't know what it is." So I'm not really sure what Rav Asi is adding. You don't usually get up and say something, and you get up and say, I don't know what it is. It doesn't make any sense. You give a pshat, and then later Mefarshim don't understand. That's one thing. But Rav Asi is getting up, the name of Rav Yochanan, he says, I heard from Rav Yochanan, the inner keres is a part of the stomach that I don't know what it is. So says the Gemara, Amr Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, nafal kreisa bibira. Then you just drop the keres into a pit. In other words, what did you add exactly by saying there's a part of the keres that narrows, but we don't know what it is? So what did you help? Okay. Amr Rav Acha bar Rav Ava Amr Rav Asi min hametzar ulamata. It's from where the keres narrows to the esophagus. The esophagus connects to the keres. So the keres, it's shaped like a football a little bit. So where it starts to narrow, that's the inner keres. So we've had 3 pshatim of what the inner keres is. A 4th pshat, Rav Yaakov bar Nachmeni Amr Shmuel Makom she'ein by milas. It's a part that does not have hairy papillae. It's a part that does not have hairiness in the inside. The skin is a little more smooth. Unclear exactly what part of that is. That's number 4. Number 5. Rav Avina Amar Geniva Mishri Darav Tefach Beveshet Samach Lekeres Zuhi Keres Hapnimis. It's actually the tefach leading up to the stomach. The entire stomach is the outer stomach. The tefach from the esophagus leading to the stomach is called the keres hapnimis. So if there's a puncture in that area, that's treif. And the last opinion, I think the fifth opinion, Amri Ba'Rabba Shridar Yosi of Rechanina, Kol HaKeres Kulaizu Keres Pnimis. No, the entire stomach is the inner keres. So what's the outer keres? If the entire stomach is the inner keres, so what's the outer keres? Apparently outside of the stomach there's a thin layer of membrane. That membrane is the outer keres, but the entire stomach is the inner keres. These are keres. Basar HaChayfa Esreiv HaKeres. The seventh and last opinion as to what is the keres, Chitza apnimi, Rabbi Ravuna Amar mafarta. It's the mafrata. My mafrata. What is that? Amar Ava heicha de pare tavachi. It's where the butchers expose. It's the portion of the stomach that is exposed when the butchers slit open the belly. Apparently, it's the part that hangs out. All right. 7 pshatim of what's the inner keres. B'nardai of the Rabbi Rav Huna. In Nardai, they follow Rabbi Rav Huna that if the mafrata is punctured, they treif up the animal. It's the part that hangs out of the belly. That's what they follow. So says the Gemara, why would they follow the last opinion out of the first 7? There's 7 opinions. Why are they following one of them? Why are they disregarding the other opinions? So I'm like, Kulu shaychim b'd Rabbi Rav Huna. Because his shita really covers all of it. His shita is basically much more inclusive than all the other opinions. And all the other opinions, so let's say you had one of the shita that said that it's where it begins to narrow. His shita includes that also. Again, a keres hapnimi, if you puncture its treif. His shita is more inclusive, so it covers all the other ones. Here's the one issue, by the way. One of the shitas that we listed is that the entire stomach is the keres hapnimis. He definitely does not agree with that, because he's only listing as part of it. You want to say he's more inclusive. He's not as inclusive as that. So the Gemara is going to point out, Hitaka argues with that opinion. That opinion Hitaka doesn't jive with. Says the Gemara, Amar le kul shachem ber Rav Huna. Ayu dervasi Rav Yechamai. Amar le kvar pirshur Rav Acha bar Rava. Uderavina Avina Rav Mai. What about that opinion? Who said that the entire stomach is the keres hapnimi? How could you say that? He agrees with that. He says it's only the part that hangs out of the belly. The other opinion said it's the entire stomach. So how could you say that everyone agrees with each other? Or his shita covers them all? So the answer is Amar le hanivadi pli. Oh, that they taka argue. Okay, last sugya of the day. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Amar B'Gdoila. Okay, so the first opinion was that the outer keres, if it's slit by roiv. Rav Yehuda said, by a big animal, it's treifa. By a tefach. By a small animal, it's roiv. So let me just say it outside, we'll see it inside. Large and big animals are not different species. It's very simple. Whichever is smaller. If you have a keres by an animal that the roiv of it is smaller than the tefach, then roiv is going to treif it up. If tefach is smaller than roiv on a bigger animal, then the tefach is going to treif it up. In other words, whatever is smaller, a tefach is 4 inches. If in one animal 4 inches is less than roiv, then 4 inches is going to treif it up. If another animal roiv is less than 4 inches, then roiv is going to treif it up. Whatever is smaller of the shear, in other words, what according to Rabbi Yehuda, what treifs up an outer keres that's slit? Either roiv or a tefach, whichever is smaller. You can have a very small animal that roiv of the keres is less than a tefach. Roiv of the keres is maybe 2 inches. Then 2 inches is going to treif it up. For some big animals where it's 50 inches wide, then a tefach is smaller than roiv. Whichever is smaller, you're going to treif it up. That's it. Says the Gemara, Amrav min Yamin bar Yefes Amrav Elazar, Lav Gedel Gedel Mamish like Ketana Ketana Mamish. When he says Gadol and Katan, he doesn't mean different species. Kol shenikra b'tefach v'lo have a ruba zu shenikra b'tefach. Ruba will have a tefach zu shenikra b'ruba. Whatever is smaller, whatever comes first, tefach or roiv, is going to treif it up. So says the Gemara, Ruba will have a tefach pshita. Okay, so if roiv is less than a tefach, isn't that a poshit? So says the Gemara, no. Leitzricha dainu tefach b'mashu. The case is normally, let's say you go with a tefach. But we said if roiv is less than a tefach, then roiv will treif it up. Let's say a tefach is 4 inches and roiv is 3.5. So you might think 3.5, let's just go with tefach always. And we're not going to go with, right? So whichever one is smaller will treif it up. If tefach comes first, then if roiv comes first, whichever one is smaller in the animal. So it says the Gemara, the chiddush is, let's say you have an animal where roiv of the keres achitzain is 3.5 inches, but a tefach is 4 inches. So you might think, it's so close, let's just go with a tefach and keep it uniform. No. Whichever is smaller. Says the Gemara, "Leitzicha have tefach mashu maude say mad demikra v'tefach lo have a treifach mash malon." Just to finish up the daf, we had different shiurim about a tear. So we said a tear is either by a tefach or roiv of the keres. Amr Geniva Amr Rav Asi Nikdara besela. Let's say it's not a straight tear, but it's a circle. You're missing a circle. So if it's the size of a coin of a sela, then it's a treifa. Why? Because apparently if you were to take a circle the size of a coin and stretch it out, it'll turn into a tefach. So a tefach is a straight line, but a circle, the circumference of a coin, is equal in size to a straight line of a tefach. Okay. Says the Gemara, Shem Tamar Tamer al Tefach. Amar Rav Chiya bar Rabba, Lididi mefarshle minei de Geniva amevar den ardoi. I was once on a bridge, and Geniva explained to me the follows: Besela kshera yaser kesela treifa. If the hole is the size of a sela only, it's kosher. Slightly more than a sela, it's treif. The kama yasa kesela. How much does it have to be larger than a sela? What's the size of a hole that will make a treif according to Geniva? Rav Yosef kigon da'ili tlasa kashyasa. If the hole is big enough that 3 date pits can pass through the hole, bitsiva bedukka. If they're coated with fruit residue, then they have to be. Then even if they're tight, beloit siva baravcha. And if they don't have fruit residue, then they have to be a little bit looser. But in other words, if you can get 3 date pits through the hole, that hole is too big, and it'll cause a treif of the keres hachitza. I'll stop here.
Not so bad.
Not too bad.